He held the necklace like it meant something. Not like a gift, but like a memory he hadn't let go of. The gold chain slipped through his fingers, the emerald catching the store's soft lighting and scattering it across the glass counter. And I realized we weren't shopping for his wife anymore. At least, not in the way I thought. This was supposed to be a quick stop. A second opinion. A thoughtful errand for Alex, my husband's best friend. Nothing unusual. We'd done things like this before: Christmas surprises, anniversary ideas, birthday dinners. He was always considerate. A little awkward, maybe, but steady. Dependable. The kind of person who remembered details other people forgot. So when he called that afternoon and said, "Hey, I need a second opinion for Sarah, can you meet me for 20 minutes?" I didn't think twice. I grabbed my coat, kissed Daniel on the cheek, and told him I'd be home before the oven timer went off. The boutique was warm. Quiet. The kind of place with velvet trays and whispered voices, where even laughter felt like it needed permission. For the first 15 minutes, everything went exactly as expected. We joked about prices, debated clasps, narrowed it down to a necklace, a thin gold chain with a single emerald pendant. Understated. Classic. It shimmered beneath the lights like it was holding its breath. Then Alex picked it up. He didn't say anything at first. Just stared at it, really stared, like he was watching a memory play across the surface. His thumb brushed the pendant, and his mouth opened just slightly. "I almost bought you something like this once," he said. No ceremony. No build-up. Just soft, like he was talking to a version of me that no longer existed. I blinked. What? He didn't repeat it. Just set the necklace back down, careful, like it had burned him. Then he looked at me, not as a friend, not as Daniel's best man, but as something else. "Before you married him," he said. There was a time. I almost said something. But I didn't. I couldn't. And I never will again. The world slowed. The ambient hum of the store vanished. No background jazz, no quiet elegance, just silence, stretched thin and sharp. He wasn't being dramatic. He wasn't asking for anything. There was no regret in his voice. Only truth. And in that silence, something shifted. Not between us, not yet. But within me. Like the first crack in something I hadn't realized was frozen. Before that moment in the boutique, I would have told you I was happy. Not the heart-racing kind. Not the kind that makes your skin hum. Just the quiet kind, the kind that feels safe. Reliable. The kind you stop questioning, because if you tug at the edges, you risk unraveling something carefully stitched together over years. Daniel and I had built a life that looked good from the outside. Neat. Predictable. We traded surprises for routines, chaos for comfort. He kissed me on the forehead every morning, always in the same place. I knew the rhythm of his day like I knew our house's floorboards, the exact number of minutes he needed to shave, how he liked his toast, the soft shift in his laugh when he was pretending to care about a story. And I loved him. I did. It just wasn't a story anymore. It was a schedule. We had Friday pizza nights, a color-coded grocery list, and a shared calendar that made everything feel efficient. And I told myself that was enough, that shared glances over coffee, inside jokes whispered in the laundry aisle, and Sunday afternoons spent folding towels in silence were the markers of something solid. Mature. But sometimes, I missed being seen. Not noticed. Not thanked for dinner or complimented for remembering to grab batteries. I mean really seen. The way someone watches your face when you say something small, something you didn't even know mattered, and they catch it. Hold it. Remember it. Alex used to do that. Before he was Daniel's best man, before everything became so tidy and appropriate. Back when we stayed up too late talking about music and memory and why certain moments shape us more than others. He listened like he was collecting puzzle pieces. Like he wanted to memorize who I was, not the wife, not the mother, not the organized adult. Just me. Back then, it felt sweet. Harmless. He was Daniel's friend, and I was part of the background. But now I wondered if he had always seen something I hadn't dared to see myself. Because that moment in the store, that look, it unlocked something I hadn't realized I'd buried. Not a longing. Not even regret. Just the aching recognition that someone remembered a version of me I had forgotten how to be. And suddenly, I didn't know if the life I'd built, the one so well-ordered, so safe, was still the one I belonged in. I went home like nothing had happened. Set the table. Stirred the sauce. Pulled the lasagna from the oven 5 minutes early, because Daniel liked the crust a little soft. I did all the things I always do. And on the outside, nothing cracked. But inside, something had already begun to come loose. He asked how it went, the shopping. I smiled. Told him Alex found something perfect. He nodded, scrolling headlines on his phone. "That guy's lucky to have you," he said. "You always know what women like." I laughed, the reflex kind. But it sounded different to my own ears. Lighter. Thinner. Like it wasn't tied to anything solid. Over dinner, he told me about a rescheduled meeting and a strange email from his boss. I nodded. Asked questions. Played the part. But Alex's words echoed, taut and humming, just beneath the surface. I almost said something. It shouldn't have mattered. Not after all this time. Not with a ring on my hand and lasagna on the table. But it did. And I hated how much it did. I kept thinking about the way he looked at me, not like a friend. Not like a placeholder in someone else's life. But like something he had once wanted and quietly decided he couldn't have. The way you choose something with your heart when you know your mouth will never follow. And what shook me most wasn't what he said. It was that a part of me, a part I'd buried somewhere between grocery lists and shared calendars, had felt it too. Not new. Not recent. But real. That night, Daniel fell asleep with the TV still glowing. A documentary about Arctic survival flickered across the room. I muted it. Pulled the blanket over his shoulder. Sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the blue light dancing across the coffee table. I thought about the necklace. The way Alex held it, careful, reverent, like it had history. The way he let go. And I realized I hadn't flinched. Not when he said it. Not when he looked at me like that. My breath caught, yes. But I didn't move away. Why? Was it shock? Or something I didn't want to name? Because once a sentence like that is spoken, once it breathes into the space between two people, it doesn't vanish. It lingers. Recolors things. Rewrites the silence. And suddenly, the life I had built so carefully didn't feel so settled. It felt paused. Like something waiting to be re-examined. The days that followed didn't explode. They just shifted. Quietly. Like the volume inside me had been turned up, and I couldn't find the knob to lower it again. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Daniel didn't notice. He still kissed my forehead in the morning, left his half-full coffee cup on the counter, still called "love you" as he grabbed his laptop bag and headed out the door. It was all the same. That was the problem. The sameness stopped feeling like comfort. It started to feel like camouflage. I caught myself staring at strange things, the dent in the couch where Daniel always sat, the streak in the hallway mirror I never wiped clean, the way the light hit the kitchen tiles at 4:30 p.m. I started asking questions I didn't want to answer. When was the last time he really looked at me? When was the last time I looked at him without just seeing the outline of habit? I wasn't angry. That made it harder. If he'd hurt me or betrayed me, at least then I'd have a clear edge to lean on. But this wasn't betrayal. It was erosion, soft, slow, steady. The kind that happens while you're folding laundry and paying bills and forgetting to kiss with intention. And now, 11 quiet words from a man who wasn't mine had pulled me out of the fog. I kept busy. Cleaned drawers that didn't need cleaning. Reorganized the pantry by expiration date. Deleted voicemails I never planned to listen to. I wasn't searching. I was trying not to feel. But feelings don't obey silence. I noticed Alex's absence. The stillness in my inbox. No thank you text. No forwarded receipt. No follow-up at all. And I knew it was deliberate. I did. But a part of me missed him anyway. Or maybe I missed something else, the version of me he saw that day. Someone I used to be. Someone who still made someone pause, look twice, forget the script. On Friday night, Daniel and I watched a movie we'd already seen. He laughed in all the same places. I didn't. I couldn't stop watching him, not with judgment, not with sadness. Just observation. Like I was trying to find the person behind the pattern. I didn't resent him. I didn't pity myself. But for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar rise in my chest. Not longing. Not anger. Just the quiet ache of being lonely inside a life I chose. He didn't reach out. Not the next day. Not the next week. At first, I told myself it was exactly what I wanted, no awkward text, no drawn-out aftermath. He'd said his piece and stepped back. Clean lines. No mess. But his silence felt louder than anything he could have said. Because once a truth is spoken, even gently, it echoes. And his had started to echo through the quietest parts of my day, the moments in between. I kept expecting to see him. At Daniel's office barbecue. At the Saturday cafe where we used to cross paths. Even in the grocery store, near the fresh herbs or the end cap with those sea salt crackers he always brought to parties. But nothing. It was like he'd disappeared on purpose. Or maybe, out of respect. And somehow, that stung more. One afternoon, I asked Daniel if Alex had been busy lately. He just shrugged. Said something about client deadlines and a new project. Nothing unusual. Just life, continuing in its familiar rhythm, oblivious to the shift that had knocked something loose in me. But I felt it. I noticed how my eyes searched for him without permission. How I slowed at yellow lights near his office. How I lingered on our group chat, thumb hovering, never typing a word. How my phone felt heavier in my palm every time it buzzed and wasn't him. One night, I dreamed about the boutique. But it wasn't the real version. In the dream, he handed me the necklace. Not a receipt. Not a glance. Just the chain itself slipping into my hand like something sacred. He didn't speak. Just looked at me like he'd never stopped seeing me. I woke up warm and embarrassed, like I'd confessed something in sleep. But it wasn't him I wanted. Not exactly. It was what he reflected. A version of me I hadn't allowed myself to miss. Someone seen. Chosen. Not for reliability or warmth or function, but for presence. For softness. For radiance. A full person, not a role. Not someone who made the world easier for everyone else. Someone who took up space. And the more I tried to push that thought away, the more it rooted. His absence had become a presence. Not a longing. A question. A shape inside me that hadn't existed before. And no matter how many drawers I organized or meals I planned or texts I deleted, I couldn't shake it. I couldn't answer it. And I wasn't sure I wanted to stop asking. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I saw his name again. Not in a message. Not a call. Just a forwarded calendar invite from Daniel. Casual dinner next weekend. Friends and spouses. The kind of evening we always hosted this time of year, potluck dishes, tangled string lights, too many folding chairs, and just enough wine to blur the lines between laughter and fatigue. I stared at the guest list, Alex attending. A flicker. Not panic. Not excitement. Just a shift behind my ribs, like a change in air pressure, subtle but unmistakable. I didn't say anything to Daniel. What would I say? On paper, it was harmless. Routine. But inside, it felt like something unfinished stepping back into the frame. That week, I noticed things I usually ignored. The way I paused at green lights. How often I checked my phone, even though I knew it wouldn't buzz. How I reached for outfits and then folded them back into drawers without trying them on. I wasn't preparing. I was resisting the awareness of myself. Of being visible. Of being seen. Saturday came warm and humming. The backyard flickered with citronella flames and clinking glassware. Daniel stood with a beer in one hand, laughing with someone from his office. And then Alex arrived. I didn't look. Not right away. But I felt the shift, the hush in my skin, the way a room changes when someone who knows too much steps inside. When I finally glanced up, he was already looking. No smile. No wave. Just stillness, like he was bracing against something unspoken. We didn't talk. Not for an hour. But the space between us felt like a breath held too long. He stayed on the far side of the yard, polite and easy, flipping burgers, laughing at all the right times. But I saw the friction. The way he adjusted his sleeves, his jaw, the pace of his sentences. The way he didn't quite meet Daniel's eyes. It wasn't longing. It wasn't guilt. It was restraint. And it felt heavier than either. When he finally passed me a tray of glasses, our fingers didn't touch. But the air between them tightened, as if both our hands remembered they could. Later, after the guests had gone, I found his jacket draped over a folding chair near the door. I reached for it before I could stop myself. My fingers brushed the fabric, paused at the cuff. A frayed thread, thin, loose, easy to miss. Just like this thing between us. Unspoken. Unraveling slowly. Still holding. But fragile now. Pulled too tight. The night after the dinner, I couldn't sleep. Daniel was out cold, his breath steady, the soft hum of the ceiling fan spinning just above. I lay beside him, eyes open, staring at the walls we'd lived between for over a decade, walls that had witnessed birthdays, stomach flus, arguments that faded into apologies. A whole life, layered in ordinary shadows. And still, I felt alone. Not in the dramatic way. Not shattered or wounded. Just, quietly apart. The kind of loneliness that doesn't arrive all at once. The kind that builds in places where attention used to live. I got up. Wrapped myself in an old sweater. Made tea I didn't want. The kettle steamed and clicked, too loud for the hour. I sat by the window and watched the soft yellow pools of street lamp light ripple across the hood of Alex's car, still parked beneath the trees. Still here. And then, without meaning to, I let the thought form. Not a fantasy. Not a wish. Just a flicker of the other path. What if he had told me back then? What if I'd looked a little longer that night at the cabin, the one where Daniel had gone to bed early, and Alex and I stayed up talking on the porch until the stars began to pale? Would I be here now? Would he? It didn't feel like longing. It felt like mourning. Not for what was lost, but for what was never given the chance to become real. A grief that lived not in memory, but in possibility. And that night, I let myself admit something I'd never fully named. I missed being chosen. Not selected. Not appreciated. Not thanked for being organized or praised for my dependability. I missed being wanted for no reason at all. Just because I made someone's chest tighten. Because someone couldn't not want me. Alex had never crossed a line. Not once. But even now, there was something in his eyes, a pause, a softness that told me he remembered a version of me I'd long since buried. And that version hadn't died. She'd just been folded away. I thought I was okay with that. I thought I'd made a fair trade, passion for stability. Risk for rhythm. But that night, under the buzz of a kitchen light and the cooling ache of a full cup of tea, I realized something I hadn't been able to say out loud. I still needed to be seen. Not admired. Not managed. Just seen. And maybe the hardest part was realizing how long I'd gone without even asking to be. The next morning, I made eggs. Scrambled, with chives, the way Daniel liked. I left the toast in too long, and he teased me like he always does, grinning as he kissed my cheek. Burnt again, he said, tapping the edge of the plate. He poured his coffee, murmured thanks, and told me he'd be home early if traffic behaved. It was an ordinary morning. Familiar. Rehearsed. But something in me had shifted. Not broken. Not ashamed. Just changed. I felt like I'd walked through a door in the dark, one no one else could see, and come back before anyone noticed. But the air from the other side still clung to my skin. It made everything feel just slightly out of focus. I opened the windows. Let the breeze in. The trees barely moved. I washed the dishes slowly, let the hot water run longer than it needed to. I stood barefoot on the tile, letting the quiet wrap around me like steam. I didn't know what to do with the stillness inside my chest. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A short vibration on the counter. A message from Alex. Hey. Just wanted to say thank you for yesterday. You looked, well. It was good to see you. That was it. Simple. Careful. Not a single word that could be misread. And still, it made me still. My hands froze on the dish towel. My thumb hovered over the screen. I stared at it. The way you stare at something dangerous, not because it's threatening, but because it might matter. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to. I did. But even a reply as small as you too would be something. A thread. A step. A yes. And I wasn't ready to hand myself permission. Not even in words. I locked the phone and placed it face down on the table. That night, Daniel rubbed my shoulders while the TV played something neither of us was watching. His hands were warm. A little clumsy. Comforting. They knew me. They didn't press for anything. And when I leaned back into him, it wasn't because I had clarity. It was because I trusted that he wouldn't let me fall. This was my life. The one I built. The one that held its shape, even when it cracked underneath. And maybe there's a version of me, somewhere, who turned toward Alex. Who let the ache say yes. But I wasn't her. I was the woman who stayed. Who chose the quiet road, the stable frame, and had to choose it again. Even when the road behind me whispered like memory. Even when the map shook in my hands. Even when staying still felt like the loudest decision of all. It's been 2 weeks since the dinner party. The necklace is probably long gone now, wrapped around someone else's neck, gifted with the kind of quiet tenderness Alex is known for. I try not to think about it. About the way it shimmered under soft boutique lighting. About the small hesitation in his fingers when he held it. About the moment he looked at me and said something that rearranged the shape of my thoughts. He hasn't texted again. I haven't either. We've both done the responsible thing, folded the truth into neat corners and tucked it into our respective pockets. Moved forward. Smiled at the right moments. But not everything moves so easily. Sometimes I catch myself standing still in a doorway, forgetting what I walked in to get. Sometimes I reread old cards and notes, wondering if I missed a sign. If a part of me always knew. If I buried that knowing on purpose because pulling it into the light would have changed the way I saw everything. I still love Daniel. That hasn't changed. I love how he sneezes 3 times in a row, every time. I love how he forgets one thing on every grocery run but comes home with something thoughtful anyway, strawberries in January, candles he thinks smell like us. I love our life. Its mess. Its structure. Its long threads of ordinary. But now I know something I didn't before. I know there was a version of me that glowed in someone else's presence. That stirred something unspoken in a man who never asked for anything, but once, just once, almost did. Maybe that version of me still exists. Maybe she always will. She doesn't need a different ending. She just needed to be remembered. Sometimes, what changes you isn't a new path. It's the awareness of where you already are. A tilt of perspective. A flicker of light across something long familiar. A whisper that reminds you, pay attention. Before comfort becomes quiet erasure. Last night, Daniel reached for my hand while we sat on the porch. Said nothing. Just held it. His grip was warm, and when I turned toward him, the air felt still. Safe. And I thought, maybe it isn't about what could have been. Maybe it's about learning how to stay. Really stay. With both feet. With open eyes. Even when part of you, in the softest places, still wonders, what if? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next story.